Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks so much for tuning in. How are you doing this morning, Lindsey?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? I haven't seen you since the weekend, so how was your weekend?
Yeah, I was just fine. How was yours?
It was good. I got to see my baby. She'll be coming to D.C. soon now that I'm
good.
officially your co-host.
Good.
You can't get rid of me.
Have you found a place to live in the city? Choosing a D.C. neighborhood is a really big choice.
Well, I'm trying to navigate through the streets, but there's a lot of federal officers all over the place, so it's a little hard to try to
Keeping
figure out.
you safe, Lindsey. I know how much you appreciate that.
No, I do appreciate it. You know, I never like to go back and forth with people that actually had the experience of somewhere or living somewhere. I think part of what my move here has taught me is that, you know, there could be studies and polls and all that stuff, but people living here actually have a good say in how it feels. So I'm excited to be a resident and see how I feel, but I hope that we can, you know, meet in the middle with the temperature.
Well,
so coming up on Rising, we're talking about a lot of stuff, right? So I'll be discussing House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He promises to bring Kristi Noem before Congress.
Also, MSNBC is changing their name. Reactions haven't been the most positive.
And if you, like me, want more Epstein files released, there's some good news on that front. But first, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Let's find out, shall we? Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg just can't catch a break. Now, Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor and a major leftist voice on social media, is yelling at him about his wealth. Reich writes on X, Mark Zuckerberg has spent $110 million to buy 11 houses in Palo Alto's neighborhood. He's turning the homes into a compound that's on top of his 30-bedroom, 30-bathroom compound in Hawaii and another in Lake Tahoe. I don't want to hear that billionaires can't afford a wealth tax. Here's my question. Is this the left distilled down to its purest essence? An essence that is simply jealous and envious toward a successful business person? Does a desire to confiscate through progressive taxation the wealth of someone who earned his money by actually building something, to take from the successful because what? Because they were too successful? I wonder what's left once a country stigmatizes productivity and encourages its most entrepreneurial people to just take their businesses elsewhere. This is, of course, exactly the experiment New York City is about to conduct, assuming they select Zohran Mamdani, a self-described socialist, to be their next mayor. Here was House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries attempting to grapple with this reality, the reality that Zohran, a socialist, is probably a more likely future Democratic Party leader than the squishy centrism that the rest of the party is offering.
And how do you think about the message of socialism, or being a socialist, and what that may portend for the Democratic Party?
Well, I think, as I indicated, listen, my view about what we as Democrats stand for, what we're fighting for. We need to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. We need to fix our broken healthcare system. And we need to clean up corruption in Washington, D.C., so we actually have a government that works for the American people, for everyday Americans, for hardworking American taxpayers, as opposed to working for the privileged few.
But back to Zuckerberg for a moment, because I think his trajectory is an important indictment of where the Democratic Party is heading. Now, for years, Zuck was a favorite punching bag of both the left and the right. Over the course of the 2010s, he became an important funder of liberal causes, which earned him the perpetual ire of Republicans, even as Facebook itself remained a vital source of web traffic for right-of-center news sites. Then, in 2016, Donald Trump got elected president, and progressives eventually landed on "it's Facebook's fault" as their preferred explanation for how this could have happened. It became commonplace to see mainstream headlines explicitly blaming Zuckerberg for allowing his social media site to platform and advertise Republican messaging. Now, 8 years prior, when Barack Obama successfully used Facebook to reach voters, including by hiring Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes to do digital outreach for the campaign, no one in the media had any problem with this. After it became apparent that non-Democrats could use Facebook too, Hughes suddenly started advocating a breakup of the company. When Democrats seized upon the now thoroughly debunked notion that Russian ads and bots on Facebook had swung the election to Trump, the anti-Facebook fever pitch reached its apex. Meanwhile, Zuckerberg had not exactly endeared himself to Republicans. Developments in 2020 and 2021 further enraged the right as the Hunter Biden laptop story, COVID-19 pandemic, produced moderation decisions that conservatives correctly despised. This was the moment of greatest danger for Zuckerberg. Principled libertarian defenders of free markets like myself, we were in retreat. Rising populism on both the left and the right had threatened to make antitrust a reality for Facebook. But then a few things happened that ultimately benefited Zuckerberg. Most importantly, Facebook and other social media sites were able to demonstrate to conservatives that their egregiously bad moderation decisions were the result of federal interference. something libertarians had long opposed. Also, Zuckerberg learned how to punch back at Democrats and MAGA's intrinsic dislike of him. It softened. Under the second Trump administration, Zuckerberg enjoys an occasionally fraught, but really much improved relationship with the president, which is broadly characteristic of other tech leaders. Elon Musk has a combative relationship with Trump, even though he loves the man. But the media still hates Zuck. For evidence, look no further than last week's story in the New York Times. Zuckerberg's compound had something that violated city code. A private school, writes the Times. The tone of the article matches the tone of the headline, pearl-clutching moral indignation. A private school in violation of the city code. The horror! Oh, the situation is perfectly understandable, though. After the pandemic hit, Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerberg decided to enroll 2 of their daughters in a pod-based homeschool-type hybrid thing alongside a dozen other kids. Zuckerbergs are obscenely rich and own a massive compound, as I said, in Palo Alto, California. They hired staff, including teachers and overseer, made the whole thing free for the families of the other kids. After the pandemic came to an end, they decided they'd prefer to continue educating their children in this manner. The other families obviously seem to like the deal too, and it seems like this is obvious, but if this arrangement, a wealthy man setting up a school on his own property, paying teachers' salaries, making the whole thing free for a dozen other families, if that violates some city code, well then the city code ought to be changed. Zuckerberg should have the right to use his own money to educate his children in a manner he sees fit. Unfortunately, that's contrary to the political direction the Democratic Party is taking. Under Mamdani, AOC, and others, the Democratic Party is going to be a hardcore, redistributionist, wealth-stigmatizing, capitalism-hating, anti-prosperity, anti-freedom, anti-choice party that thinks the government and the central planners get to decide who deserves how much of their own money and what you can do with your own property. It's coming to a city near you, if you're a New Yorker, very, very near you.
How much time do I have? Can I get the violin? I can't believe, I cannot believe that, it's not Zuckerberg's fault that the system is set up in a way that rewards millionaires and that punishes the everyday American. I think what people are asking for is fair treatment. So let's just comb through Zuckerberg because you brought him up as an example as like the victim here. From 2013 to 2018, when he made a huge portion of his capital, he paid a tax rate, an effective tax rate of 13.7%. The average middle class person paid what?
I have no idea.
Way more, 21%. Okay, so that's the part of America that people are confused about. If I am an average middle class earning American and paying 21% on my income, why is Zuckerberg a billionaire and has been for quite some time paying 13% and much less than me? And so I think that is the biggest issue. The same thing with the Palo Alto school. It's like it's against code, but you don't have to follow those rules. But mind you,
have to follow that
I
rule,
have to.
and no one should have
but
to pay
it exists, and so either way, the taxes still exist.
Bringing your tax rate down to. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has paid
Mark Zuckerberg knows how to skirt around.
You.
He knows how to skirt around things. That's the whole point. Rich people have access to things that poorer people do not, or middle class people do not, right? Like offshore bank accounts and ways. So it's just like people can get upset at the same time and be excited about him achieving the American dream. It's just that when somebody pulls their own money from resources in the same community that they're violating code in.
It's their money, not the community.
But it's just the principle that he has no. While he's benefited much from like skirting around major things, he also is only benefiting himself, but also raised the taxes in the community for everyone that's paying much more at a higher percentage of their income than he is. So in Palo Alto, because things like Facebook came by, the average garbage man can't afford to live in the community they might have grown up in. And so these are things that he should give back and pay forward. So that is an option because it's his personal wealth, but I still think that people can be upset that he's not paying the same tax rate as them and criticize him. And that's what most Democrats are doing.
Well, he's paying more.
Like actual dollar amount, but the amount and percentage.
I don't think I think the tax rate. I'd have to look closely at why that is, or if that is the case. But the tax rate should be the same for everyone, and it should be very low. It should be even lower than 10% is as much as I'm willing to go at it. I pay
flat for everyone.
I don't know why I paid a tax rate. I can tell you much appallingly higher than that last year. You probably did as well.
And it doesn't bother you.
We're not as wealthy as Zuckerberg. Of course it bothers me. I want it zero.
Okay, so the average American can be bothered if Zuckerberg found a way to get his to 13% and you're paying 40%.
I just want access to, I want legal advice like that then. I don't want to bilk him more for being successful, but that's why I don't vote for Democrats. Next up, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and 6 other European leaders met with President Trump at the White House yesterday as he continues his push for peace. We'll talk about it right after this.
force between our allies that kind of standing beside Ukraine, saying that our interests are directly tied with Ukraine's interests. So maybe let's ask what we want and what Ukraine wants to make sure that you're not only meeting with Putin and seeing what he wants, because how Trump went into that meeting
was that Zelensky right there.
Well, I know, but how Trump went into the meeting with Putin was very much, oh, our goal is a ceasefire. How he came out of it is, oh, Putin wants to just get to the full deal, we'll do that, which we both know, Robby, is going to take months. Right before that meeting with President Trump in Alaska, Putin bombed and Russia bombed Ukraine, dropped several drones on them. And so it was also a sign of disrespect to do that a night before a meeting with President Trump and then continue to do it, not agreeing to a ceasefire because obviously they think that Ukraine will be able to get some ground or gather itself, and they don't want to give Ukraine any opportunity to even gather itself, which is also saying that they're not serious about ending this war. I think a big sign of being serious would have been saying yes, what most European leaders want. We are going to do a ceasefire, and that would have been Putin for the first time after 5 different meetings with President Trump, most of which on the phone and one in person, agreeing to do something to show, yes, I do seriously want to come to a deal here. But what I see now is just a kind of flip-flop back and forth, remembering that Trump put this arbitrary deadline in place for August 8th, saying if Putin doesn't come to the table with a, quote, ceasefire, that he's going to put economic sanctions on Russia. That deadline came and went. No economic sanctions happened.
Just love economic sanctions.
I'm just saying, but nothing happened. So what I think we risk is being a flip-flop country and having President Trump at the helm of it saying he's going to make a deal, but all he's doing is bending to Putin's will. And what I risk is what the optics of that looks like, because Europe and all these European leaders,
who cares about the optics?
they care about how we look, because if we don't get it done, now he's asked Putin what he wants, and Putin will continue doing stuff that America is not in America or Europe's interest.
That's what he's going to do anyway. If Putin is committed to conquering Ukraine, he's just going to do it. And so at worst, under what I'm advocating, the worst outcome is, you're right, it's possible. He doesn't actually want peace, and he'll keep having meetings with people, but he's going to still keep conquering the entire country. That is a possibility under my plan. Under your plan, that is what is guaranteed to happen. So I don't understand what the issue is. And nothing, you think like a bigger rhetorical stand against Putin or sanctions or something, that's going to deter him? Of course not.
I think that our European allies have been very clear about what they think should happen next. They feel that a ceasefire should happen next, and they also are afraid, which was vocalized during this meeting, that the invasion that Russia is doing can happen again and elsewhere.
That's why we
need to get a security guarantee in place for sure. But it needs to happen under the terms that Europe is comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, even though Ukraine is not a NATO member, all these other countries that came to the table with Ukraine alongside them are saying Ukraine's interests are our interests. And so if we don't get in line, we need to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a vulnerable situation.
Russia is willing to go along with.
And also Europe and Ukraine. And so they are always the afterthought in these conversations. And I think that they need to be the forethought, because number one, a ceasefire is imminent in order to have anything happen. Because what will happen is Russia keeps taking more and more territory. And by the time we come down to it, there'll be no Ukraine anyway. So
we should have negotiated sooner.
Or we could put those sanctions in to see if Russia wants to really stop, right? There's a lot of things we can all do.
What is it? We have them in place. It's not gonna
everyone wants money. And so the minute we start to put them and strain their wallets is the minute they're in a precarious situation where they may consider, actually, this is not ideal, and we'd like to move forward in a way that's more...
I don't know. We've sanctioned we've sanctioned a lot of regimes before. Do sanctions have some track record of getting foreign hostile governments falling in line, going, oh, okay, now I'll be a pro-Western friendly organization?
Do Trump meetings with Putin have a track record of getting anything accomplished? How many ceasefires has Putin violated in the past?
We've tried moral condemnation, economic blockade, thunderous outrage, rallying Europe against him. Not that they're going to quit the energy, but everything else. We've tried that. It didn't work. Now we're trying Trump's approach, which is being nice and doing outreach and seeing if we can get a deal in place. Maybe we can't. At worst, we'll be right where we started.
I just want to know, Trump's approach, you're like, we've tried it, but you're pretending like this meeting with Putin is the first time that Trump has talked to Putin in the last 7 months. No, I just told you this is the 5th time they've spoken.
Well,
so we've tried it.
Is a little bit more complicated.
I understand. We've tried it multiple times, though, and Trump has every time been let down, like, oh, I'm so disappointed. I thought we had a deal on the table. He said on the campaign trail, this is going to be a day one issue, just knocked it out of the park. He admit this is harder than he thought, but maybe perhaps the way that he was going about it, like asking Russia for first what they want and asking European allies and Zelensky second is maybe not the way we should try either. Maybe he should come in unison with Europe and say, this is what we want. We all together are equally, if not more strong than you, Russia. So listen to what we want and let's have a real deal to the table.
That's obviously not going to work. I mean, it's just so obvious that that's not going to do anything.
Tell me why.
Because they're not willing to send troops. And Russia doesn't care. Unless there's going to be ground troops sent by European countries or the U.S., that could make a difference on the battlefield, but that would also start a larger war with Russia. We would have to declare war on Russia, I would hope, in our congressional system, which no one wants to do. Not a single person is for doing that. So given that that's been taken off the table, this is the best we can do.
No, this is an issue stemming all the way back from the Soviet Union dissolving and Russia wanting more what they had after losing a war. And even though they're not saying that outright, everything that Putin has been indicating for the last decade is that he wants to go back to the Soviet Union, and Europe does not want that. And so these are all of our allies. So you're aware of all the ground that has been made and all the members of NATO that are now allied more with the U.S. than they are with Russia. It wouldn't behoove us in any way to allow Russia to inch closer to recreating any type of Soviet Union. And so that's kind of Putin's ideal goal here. So even when he goes in these meetings with Trump and Trump's like, I understand. It's like, in what world have people lost a war, lost land, and then gotten the land back and said, okay,
Liberals like to pretend that there is some all-out war option for constraining hostile regimes, and there just isn't. The solution to the problem you're presenting, that what if he just wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union and start conquering all of Europe? Sorry, the answer to that is we got to have World War III. I'm unwilling to do that, and so I'm going to try other things. But you're like, well, maybe we can really stand up to him, and then he's going to back down. It's not going to happen.
You don't know. We don't know. No way has worked so far. Biden's way hasn't worked, and neither have Trump's 5 conversations over the last 7 months. So still ahead, Hakeem Jeffries is making a promise of accountability should Democrats regain power in the midterms. And his first step, calling Kristi Noem before Congress. That's coming up next in My Lens. Stick around.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Yes, we are talking about Hakeem Jeffries. So when House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries promised that Kristi Noem would be one of the first called before Congress, which he did this past week, if the Democrats take the majority in 2026, he wasn't just previewing political theater, he was signaling a long overdue accountability moment.
It's my expectation that Kristi Noem will be one of the first people hauled up to Congress shortly after the gavels change hands to get a real understanding for the American people as to this conduct that has taken place, the lack of respect for due process, for the rule of law, the unleashing of masked agents on law-abiding immigrant communities, and the disappearing of people.
Because what we've seen under Noem's watch as Homeland Security Secretary isn't just controversial, it's policy. I mean, it's a collision between power and the Constitution. Listen, the government has every right to deport violent criminals. Everyone's on the same page about that. What we're talking about here is not that. These are families being ripped apart, U.S. citizen children deported to other countries they've never known, and raids on churches, swap meets, and sidewalks that read less like lawful arrest and more like kidnappings in broad daylight. Armed masked agents storming neighborhoods. It looks less like Law and Order and more like a scene from maybe a dystopian movie, except it's not fiction. It's happening right here. And at the center of it is Secretary Noem, who, when asked to define habeas corpus earlier this year, which, by the way, is a bedrock constitutional right, got it flat out wrong. Let's take a listen.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
Now, that's not just a slip of the tongue. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of the very principle that protects us all from government overreach. Habeas corpus is the right of a person to challenge their detention. Without it, the government could just lock anyone up indefinitely. Even Abraham Lincoln had to go to Congress before suspending it during the Civil War. Yet somehow, Kristi Noem thinks she can redefine it on the fly. Meanwhile, lawsuits are just piling up. The ACLU and others say these mass raids aren't about justice. They're really about quotas. 3,000 arrests a day demanded from the White House no matter who gets caught in the dragnet. The result, overcrowded dungeon-like detention centers, families denied food, water, and lawyers. That's not just cruel, it's really unconstitutional. And it costs taxpayers millions of dollars also to warehouse people who pose no threat to society. So Jeffries is right. This calls for oversight, not partisan point scoring, but a public examination of what happens when immigration policy is driven by fear, politics, and raw numbers instead of law and due process and human dignity. Because if the government can strip immigrants of their rights today, what's to stop them from doing the same thing to citizens tomorrow? Kristi Noem may soon face Congress, but make no mistake, this is bigger than her. It's about whether America will continue to twist the meaning of justice until it serves whoever holds power, or whether we'll insist that justice in this country still means something. This isn't about Kristi Noem forgetting her civics lesson. It's about whether America still remembers its own. So listen, immigration is President Trump's biggest issue, right? He was winning on the fact that we're going to deport violent criminals and go about that. But as you've seen, and as polls have shown us in the last 7 months, public opinion of how he's going about handling immigration has dramatically swayed.
Has it?
Yeah, actually, there's an Economist YouGov poll from this summer saying 52% of Americans think that President Trump's approach to immigration has been, quote, too harsh. And some of the ways that he's treating people, even going into LA with federal troops, was completely unnecessary, overstepping local government, which is not something that Republicans generally do. There's a lot of ways that he's handling it that, to the American public is not the way that they wanted to see happen.
I don't agree that it's not the way necessarily the American people want to see. I've seen polls showing broad support for exactly what Donald Trump is doing. I find it very interesting that the Democrats' plan, as soon as they have power again, is going to be to do weaponized lawfare, deep state stuff against Kristi Noem. So we're just conceding now that, or I hope liberals are conceding, Democrats are no better than Republicans. It's all the same. Once another party gets into power, they will pursue whatever legal actions they can against all of the members of the previous regime. They'll try to put Donald Trump in prison again, and then Republicans will do that to Democrats, and Democrats will do that to Republicans. I don't think that's good, and I would like to see my Democrats, aspire to something a little bit more lofty.
That's so interesting that you call for that type of lofty aspiration when you don't require that from any Republicans. But we'll just put a pin right there.
Well,
and
Republicans
just say,
are my party. I know.
I mean, that's literally like they want to. They're doing an Russiagate investigation for no reason right now, and wasting
for the reason is they tried to jail President Trump over.
They were trying to attach treason to President Obama, which they know is extreme far shot and never happening, and so they're wasting the same amount of time. But this is actually legitimate to look into how or whether or not we're following constitutional law when we're deporting and detaining migrants, and if we're doing it constitutionally or based on quotas, and if we're following everyone's due process, because we've seen multiple incidents where we were not. And it's not a Lindsey thing. This is not a Democratic thing. This is also a Republican thing. This is a Joe Rogan thing. He brought it up to Anna Paulina Luna on his podcast last week saying, great, deport my landscaper, basically arguing how Americans feel even where he stands, people who voted for President Trump saying this was not the intention. It's one thing to deport criminals and everyone you said you were going to deport. It's another thing to just straight up willy-nilly just try to get everyone out of the country, because there's multiple businesses and people that voted for President Trump that don't think that that is the strategy and the way forward. You could talk about farmers, people who own farmland. There's multiple industries that are going to suffer because migrants are just being deported in the way that President Trump is doing it. So when you look at those polls and wonder why there's such mixed reaction on how he's going about it, it's because what was promised is that, get these criminals out of here. That's a pretty American thing. Everyone can understand that. But on the other side of that is just sweepingly get everyone out of here and do it without following the Constitution. That's an issue and should be an issue regardless of party.
Well, I think we should follow the Constitution. I don't think we should deport landscapers, although there are a lot of Trump supporters who want everyone who's here illegally to go, come hell or high water, and it should be done in a constitutional manner, in a manner that abides by due process. Although oftentimes due process is not some kind of paper shield that means you can't be deported or you can't suffer some adverse criminal action. It just means there has to be a process. For instance, in the case of every liberal's favorite illegal immigrant, Abrego Garcia, there was due process. The end of the process was he had to be deported back to his native country. Now, things should be done according to the precepts of the Constitution and according to what the Supreme Court says. I have no doubt the government is overreaching in a variety of ways that trouble me as a civil libertarian. I don't want to see mass deportations of otherwise lawful people, but just because it's happening doesn't mean it's illegal or violates some. You say quotas. I mean, there's a mandate clearly to deport a massive number of illegal immigrants. They don't have a right legally to be in this country. They have a right against being prosecuted, incarcerated, having their speech rights violated, but being in the country is not something that that right does not exist, and their rights against the government are a little bit murkier than the rights of citizens or rights of even non-citizens in a criminal action.
And I think just to bring Christie
Noem
before Congress and just ask the questions about how they're going about this and how they're following the Constitution is not a bad thing. We talk about what Congress doesn't do or, making it too partisan, but I think this is a real question to ask because there are people like the Joe Rogans of the world and his millions of followers that are saying, hey, seems like a real overreach. And so that's the whole point of checks and balances. And what Congress should do is say, are you guys overreaching here? Are you outside of the confines of our law that we have set up? And then check it from there. And I think that is not a bad thing for him to say, but just feels partisan because it came from Hakeem Jeffries.
Well, we'll see if they ever get power over Congress again, and they can do exactly that. They can have another committee hearing. So many committee hearings, so little time. Coming up next, President Trump is vowing to end mail-in ballots and voting machines. Sounds like a good idea, maybe? Stay with us. President Trump is vowing to lead an effort to get rid of mail-in ballots and, quote, seriously controversial voting machines before the 2026 midterms.
Now, Trump says that voting machines cost way too much and that the watermark paper, quote, leaves no doubt as to who won and who lost on election night.
Trump also said that other countries have gotten rid of mail-in ballots due to voter fraud, writing, quote, we will begin this effort, which will be strongly opposed by the Democrats because they cheat at levels never seen before, by signing an executive order to help bring honesty to the 2026 midterm elections. He continues, quote, elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots voting. And everybody, in particular the Democrats, knows this. The Republican Party, will fight like hell to bring honesty and integrity back to our elections.
Now, Trump, of course, has pushed the narrative that the 2020 election was, quote, rigged. In response, California Governor Gavin Newsom wrote on X, quote, Trump knows he's going to lose in 2026. His plan to rig new congressional seats is going to backfire, thanks to California. Now he's clamoring for other ways to cook the results. This man reeks of desperation. Let's keep up the pressure.
Meanwhile, Mark Hemingway of Real Clear Investigations wrote, right now there's an investigation in Hamtramck, Michigan. Oh, I know where that is. Because a city council member who narrowly won an election is on video apparently stuffing ballot boxes. The mayoral election in Bridgeport, Connecticut was overturned, and also for mail ballot fraud. Fraud absolutely happens. Fraud happens.
Well, let's start with the top thing about Trump's entire statement. The Constitution does not provide the privilege to the president to change anything about how voting is handled. That's a congressional decision. So if he decides to do some executive order, we know that there's going to be lawsuit after lawsuit. It's probably not going to stand through the Supreme Court. And so he's going to waste Americans' time with this game that he's playing. That's just
Congress should do it.
Yeah, but Congress should not do that.
What's
they should definitely.
The problem, Lindsey, with cracking down on voter fraud? Don't we want to have some kind of verification process for you to vote?
I just think that's a baseless claim. Multiple people that have worked in our apolitical organizations have said specifically that mail-in voting is not affected. It actually, and you know what's so crazy? In 2024, a third of President Trump's votes came from mail-in voting. So he's actually cutting off his own nose to spite his face, saying that he doesn't want to have mail-in voting happening. And you're also disenfranchising people that have a disability or are unable to make it to the ballot box. I know, Robby, that exists out here. There's people who actually can't make it. Voting by mail is a convenience for a lot of Americans, but it was out of desperation during COVID when we couldn't leave the house. And then there were other times where people just actually
couldn't leave the house.
Well, we were advised not to leave the house,
we
but
were
also
trapped in our homes by an
but also there's people who actually can't leave the house that are extremely disabled. So like, what happens to these people? They're just disregarded because President Trump wants to sign an executive order. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's not enough long-term hard evidence to show that there has been voter fraud in dramatic fashion that's changing the election in any way. And Trump, a third of the vote came from mail-in voters. So why would he try to change this right now? It makes no sense.
Let me tell you a little story, a little personal anecdote.
Oh gosh, I don't want to hear. I can't decry a personal anecdote, but I'm listening.
I actually don't have time or feel like showing up in person to vote, so I usually request an absentee ballot.
Okay.
Get a ballot in the mail, filled it out. And then I was mailed an additional ballot for the previous tenant of my apartment, Mr. Juan Ramirez.
You're going to say his whole name?
That's not his actual name.
Okay,
It's a Latino name, but I changed the name.
Okay.
So, I was able to vote twice. I didn't actually vote twice, but the ability to do so was right in front of me. What do you say to that?
So
Lindsey?
that's not
Checkmate.
right. That's not right. I hope that you do the right thing.
I
You have
get
a moral
the
compass.
previous
But I do.
attendance
But let me
mail
tell you, when you
all
fill
the
out.
time.
Okay, so what Trump is saying, 5 and 6 and 7 ballots come to a house. Cut it out. Okay, most people,
just have it
most
too.
adults change their address. Like, this is called a change of address form. So let me tell you, all adults, when you move, you should do a change of address form with your post office. But let's say you
I've
don't.
moved
That's
6
one.
times in the city, and we've done all that every time, and you still have mail going all over
But
the place.
it's not that. That's a rare occurrence as opposed to
I
what
don't
Trump
think
is
it's rare.
saying is 5 and 6 and 7 ballots coming in one house. No, ballots all have barcodes.
It's 2 or 6.
Ballots all have barcodes, and so when you turn them in, the barcode has to match your name as they're scanning these things. It's not like they're just going into oblivion and some old man is like, "Oh yeah, we'll give Jack Donahue one," and then that's not how it goes.
No, maybe
so
I
it actually is a barcode that is attached to your name.
sure.
You can't vote 17 times for Robby.
What I could have invalidated Juan Ramirez's other vote because I would send it in his, and they go, which is the real Juan Ramirez? Probably there's more than one Juan Ramirez.
Okay,
on the voter
a federal
rolls,
judge blocked Trump's executive order that sought to prevent states from counting mail-in ballots when they're postmarked by. He wanted to stop mail-in ballots that, like last time, that were postmarked on Election Day but received after that. So he's just saying anything right now to try to also simultaneously, which was Governor Newsom's point, redistrict Texas to try to get more votes. Like, why don't you just win off of the premise that you're doing things for American families that are necessary right now? The things that you ran on, like making the economic squeeze. Wait, let me finish my point. He can win in 2026 in the midterms. So I think that's what Newsom was referring to. Not Trump himself, but the entire party won't lose their seats in the midterms if they're actually offering something outside of the big, beautiful bill, which they're scared during the summer recess to go to their hometowns and discuss. As we've seen, they got booed and heckled during these big conferences that they have with local people. So if they actually put policy in place that is supported, then perhaps they'll be in a situation for midterms to win as opposed to trying to change the rules in the fourth quarter, which doesn't make any sense because it's not constitutional for the president to do in an executive order. There's other ways about winning, and it doesn't require cheating. Also, for somebody who doesn't just certify the 2020 election results, he shouldn't be talking about cheating and winning because he won this election and he lost that election and can't even say that. So if we talk about results and actually being honest about them, he first needs to be honest about 2020.
I would like to restrict the vote. I would like fewer people voting. I don't think you should be voting if you don't pay a significant amount of money in taxes. I don't think if you don't pay taxes, you absolutely should not vote. Why should you have any say over how much of my money is confiscated and what it is spent on if you yourself don't contribute anything?
So you're saying if somebody avoided paying their taxes for the year, they shouldn't vote that year?
Yeah.
Or they could just file an extension, or you want to ban everybody? This is also going to affect the Republican Party. You understand? This is also will affect libertarians.
The Republican Party votes for
this
all
will
sorts
also
of things I don't like. I think only some very people with a lot of skin in the game should be making decisions for everyone. Again, I don't want to make decisions for you or for anyone else for how you live your life or how your home is organized or how your finances are. I don't want to have any say. I don't care. It's not my business. But I am unlike most other voters in America. Most people seem to want to, invest some central authority with grand powers to control me and all aspects of my life. So I say thanks, but no thanks. We'll just run our own lives. Might be a little bit better. So this whole project of getting everyone to vote is a little suspect to me. It's saying, how many more tyrants should I have lording over me?
Wow, that's an extreme statement. I think we do need a little bit of law and order, especially as the Republicans being the party of law and order. They should understand that we do need some type of oversight on Americans to make sure that people follow the rules, like a basic principle of,
The wolves voting on it.
No,
we need sheep to eat for dinner.
No, we need
The
to
sheep
organize
doesn't want the
ourselves.
wolves
People
to
won't just
vote.
automatically make the right decisions. I don't believe that. And not to say that they won't
People
morally.
will automatically
but
make the right
No, they
decision.
won't. And so that's why you need police outside, right? That's
People
why you
make good
need
decisions for themselves and for their families and for their homes and their households. People are very bad because people are careful with their own money. They're very incautious with other people's money. They're more reckless because you have no expertise in other people's affairs. So that is, this is the libertarian ethos where we should be more directly accountable for ourselves and have less direct accountability or oversight or control over other people's lives.
All right. So no votes at all. Up next, MSNBC.
Break the machines.
MSNBC
Break
is
'em.
changing its name and it's drawing some mixed reaction. We'll be right back after this. One of the biggest cable news networks in the country is undergoing a rebrand. MSNBC will soon be known as MS Now. It's an acronym that stands for My Source News Opinion World.
In their official announcement on Thursday, MSNBC says this name further underscores our mission to serve as your destination for breaking news and thoughtful analysis and remain the home for the perspective that you've relied on for nearly 30 years. Goes on to mention that this change is happening as part of a move to a new company known as Versant. I haven't figured it out yet, but we'll know that soon enough. That will also include other channels such as CNBC, the Golf Channel, and Sports Engine, which will no longer be considered part of NBC News.
Now, as part of the rebrand, MS Now will also be dropping the famous NBC Peacock logo. Reactions to the change have been mixed, to say the least, on social media. CNN's K-File saying, "What's the problem? This seems fine."
But Outkick founder Clay Travis says, good Lord, MSNBC's brand is so toxic that they won't even let them use the NBC brand anymore. MS Now, it looks like Ms. Now first is the first problem. There's so many problems with
like
this.
Mrs.?
This
like
is one of the worst, yeah, like Miss or Mrs. There's so many problems with this. It's hard to even know where to begin. Well, that's the first one. MS Now makes me want to say MS-13 also, which is the terror group. It also looked, the logo, I can't get into why it looks bad on television, but it looks like it's sending a subliminal self-harm message if you look at it the way I did. You saw it. You saw what I was pointing out. Yes, you did.
I'm going to let you finish.
What else? Changing anything is always wrong and bad and stupid and dumb. And
wow, changing anything.
Yes.
So changing presidents, we should have stayed with Biden?
Changing corporate rebranding is always bad. Remember when HBO Max, which was just HBO, was a good name. HBO Max, then it's just Max. They dropped the HBO
Wow, you dropped the major
part
one.
Everybody knows what it is. They dropped it, and they realized eventually that was dumb. I used to think people in charge of big organizations who make, I don't know, like branding decisions, they're probably smart people. What do I know? I'm just a lowly TV host. I don't know anything. Now I know that those people just must not be very smart because they keep doing things like that, and it's just bad every time.
Okay, look, pump the brakes. Guys, just so everybody knows, I used to work at MSNBC. I started my career there for
At Ms. Now?
At Ms. Now.
Ms. Now or Ms. Right Now?
I used to work at Ms. Now,
Ms. back
MSNBC, and I was there for the process. This is 15 years ago. So the process of when they were at their 15-year mark, just building to now, what is almost their 30-year mark, their brand really changed the way it looked, but it also helped solidify who they were in the space, because at the time when I first got there, they were doing like car chases, high-speed chases live, and now they're just heavy in politics. So they solidified who the brand is and have some real talented people over there that have, really worked hard to be synonymous with the brand. I understand that there's a breaking apart of two companies, and so NBC is the bigger parent company that's keeping their Peacock and everything, but CNBC is keeping CNBC exactly as it is and just changing what the acronyms mean. They're changing it to what is it? Consumer News and Business Channel.
Fine. No one's
but my point is why couldn't MSNBC just keep the name, change the logo, and just make it I don't know, major stories,
I agree.
news and bold commentary, like something that goes better.
I have disagreed with you a lot today, but I agree with that. They should keep it and have it stand for something else. Actually, an organization that I cite a lot, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, right? They were the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, and then they broadened their scope, but they kept the same acronym. That is smart. Yes, that I agree with doing.
It's just like when WWE went from WWF to WWE. I'm like, why couldn't they just figure out another word for the F instead of federation? Fine, it's not a federation.
Fighting.
Fighting. Like worldwide fighting.
Fisticuffs.
It's so simple to do, but the fact that it's now, and it was just a mouthful. Like I was watching Morning Joe, like I always do. Mm-hmm. And even as Joe was saying, we're separating ourselves and being independent. So I encourage it. What's wrong with it? But he also was trying to say what the new acronym stood for, and it was just taking a while. And that was a little funny to watch, because it's this can't be such a mouthful. No one ever says MS anything. And the point is that it really bothers me is that MSNBC, if you know the history of it, was a merger between NBC News and Microsoft. Microsoft then left the building years ago, and they kept MS in the name.
Right.
So
why do you have to?
It's mean nothing for the last 15 years almost. Yeah. So the fact that Microsoft hasn't been involved in so long and it's still kept MSNBC, they might as well have just kept it going, because it didn't mean anything for the longest time.
We could have come up with something for it to stand for. And
that was...
By the way, I felt the same way before someone tries to get me on hypocrisy. The Twitter rebrand. Sometimes
didn't
I call it
that either.
X. I still call it Twitter half the time.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, no one knows what. How do you say, like, if someone sent a tweet? You say an X? Like, what do you say?
Right,
You still
you
say a
tweet it.
tweet. People still say that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because an excerpt.
An excerpt.
Oh, wow.
See, our producer Louis should be working in loftier companies doing good.
And it felt like they were trying to, like, over-explain. I saw the executive's email because that was all over the reporting. And it was like, you know, as we define this time to decide who we are, we have to step away and be our own person. And it's like, yeah, you can step away, just change the logo. Any logo would have been fine.
Most annoying corporate rebranding in my lifetime was definitely Comcast for Xfinity, which was just because they were, you know, everyone hated their customer service because it was like the worst on the planet. So like, we're just going to call it Xfinity now. Don't be mad at us.
I'm not
Same
actually
company.
mad, though. I like Xfinity a lot. It's been very...
We just know it's Comcast.
That was one that actually worked. This one is too close to the original. And you know, it's also going to be so interesting to watch this play out. And I hope they all succeed because I have a lot of friends that still produce there and work there. But, you know, it's just a totally different thing where they're not, you know, they're going to be relying on themselves. So,
All right, that does it for us today on Rising Live. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.